listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plimer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
Okay, welcome to episode number 61 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plimer, and joining me today is Dan Cottrell. Dan is the editor of Rugby Coach Weekly and comes with 25 years of coaching experience. Originally a teacher, he took on the Rugby Coach Weekly role full-time in 2005 and now mixes it with coach education, tutoring and coaching as well. He has had roles with age grade rugby in Surrey and the Ospreys region, along with an assistant coach role with the Welsh Women, and it's a pleasure to have him on the show. So welcome, Dan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no worries. Great to catch up and link up via Twitter, and we managed to arrange this one pretty quickly. So definitely handy, and really looking forward to chatting to you.
Great. Well, I'm also interested because I've just started a few podcasts myself, and I looked at your amazing list of coaches, and I thought jealously, I need to find some people equal to this. This is going to be a very interesting experience trying to answer questions rather than ask questions.
Yeah, cool.
So be gentle.
Okay, I'll do my best. Cool. So I'll give you the nice underarm bowl here. What's your backstory of your playing career and your early coaching days?
That nice underarm. I'll just see if I can knock that out between cover and extra cover, which means that really cricket's my first love. I love cricket, but I got a bit better at rugby. And anyone who played with me in my younger days will know that I was one of the world's worst tacklers. But I love the tactical side of the game. And luckily I got faster and a bit bigger and broke through into some quite good rugby. And by, again, sheer chance, I happened to be coached by some quite good and, famous coaches. When I was I went to play at Bath, where Jack Rowell was, and Brian Ashton was the coach there, and he was inspirational. And in that Bath team, there was the likes of Andy Robinson, obviously coached England, Mike Catt, who coached with England, and Stuart Barnes, Jerry Guscott. And though I didn't play many first-team games, just being around them was pretty special, and you sort of saw what it looked like to be a great player, even if you weren't one yourself. And then at Bristol, Dave Allred was there just before he really broke through, so picked up a few kicking tips off him, and just generally very lucky to come across some excellent coaches, and wasn't accountable a little bit, and then went into teaching. And when I went into teaching, that's when I started coaching rugby properly, quickly got my level 2. And I know it's a question which is coming up, but you're going to ask me what my early coaching looked like.
Yeah.
And it was a real mixture of completely dreadful, sometimes okay, and sometimes accidentally okay. And I can remember the time that I just got my level 2, and a really good guy called Martin Pepper was involved with Surrey Rugby, and he said, all right, come down and help out with the Surrey under-16s or under-18s. And I came down and he said, right, you're going to be doing this drill. And I set up this drill. And after about 5 minutes, he kindly came in and saved the day because it was awful and very inactive. And that was embarrassing at the time. I'm glad of it because it showed me that you just can't rely on what you learned as a player. You have to actually create your own exercises. So then I went on to head up the rugby at Cranley School, and then while I was at Cranley School, there was a guy I knew in the village, and he was running a publishing company, and we came up with a rugby coaching magazine concept. And eventually it was big enough for me to stop doing that and stop teaching and take that up pretty much full time with a few other things. And that's what I've been doing for since 2005. So what's that? It's 13 years full time with a few other things on top, like coaching the coaches, things like that.
Wow. Okay. Sounds great. So those first coaching experiences, was it very much so like just transferring what you'd experienced as a player, very drill based, very kind of you felt it was successful when you played, so it'll be successful for any environment? Or was it a bit more kind of you explored a little bit, and some of the catastrophic failures were actually the best ones, or how was it?
I think some of those. What is interesting in what you've just asked is that I'm not sure if I reflected whether it was successful for me or not. I just thought it was the way to do it. And then as I've coached more and learnt more, and my whole coaching style is, I would say, completely different, but it is quite significantly different in terms of the sort of exercises we're doing. The exercises which I enjoyed most and I learned the most from were probably playing games. And most of the teams I played in, we would play a massive game of touch rugby before training would start. The whistle would go, and then you would go into
the fun stops.
The fun stops and the drills start. Now, some of the drills were good fun. And we used to play, when I was at Clifton Rugby, we used to play a game down a corridor. And I can't tell you what the name of the game was because it involves a lot of swearing. But it was dull something or others if you mess it up. And it was a very competitive exercise, and everyone loved it. And then when I went to, later on, I was playing at Esher. And the coach there, a guy called Peter Taylor, I think that was his name, used to play at Rosslyn Park. He was a very inspirational coach, and he used to play some very, very full-on games. And they were the best part of the whole training, not the drills. And we had some guest coaches come in, and we ran these length of the field drills, and they were just not interesting. So in answer to your question, I used drills because that's what we were used to. I didn't reflect enough on what I got most out of. And talking to people like, say, Russell Earnshaw and John Fletcher and people like that, they say that actually put yourself in their shoes as the players, think what they're enjoying, think what's energizing them, and then try your best to match that within the context of, or the environment of, what you want to achieve.
Yeah, that's great. And two great people to lead that kind of chat too. So in terms of your coaching philosophy, like you mentioned, you were doing your level 2, and your facilitator came in and kind of kindly bailed you out of that situation. That's obviously a moment where you start thinking about how you're coaching. Were there any other kind of key moments or kind of light bulb moments or books or that kind of brought you down to a more athlete-centered games-based style?
I think, well, first of all, I did my level 2 because we in those days, and this is a long time ago, this is 1994, 94, 95. If you played rugby to a certain level, you would jump straight onto a level 2, so you never did a level 1.
Right.
So we did the level 2, and there were some very good coaches on there. Those involved in England rugby or coaching, being coached in the London area, will know a guy called Chris Kibble, and he was excellent on the course, and that was from a long time ago. And the thing which frustrated me was that we would have games on this level 2 course, and all the coaches would love it. We would be racing around doing all the skills, thrills and mistakes, and then the coach would stop and say, right, this is what's going to happen, and everyone was standing around really frustrated. And that's a light bulb moment for me that took me about 10 years to realize that actually the flow of a game should not be stopped by the coach. It should be continued with the coach being able to enter without breaking the flow. So how would you not stop the game yet be able to give ongoing feedback? So I'm going to throw that over to you. How would you not stop the game yet be able to give feedback and let the flow go?
Well, I've been, I like coaches, players being coaches. I'm a big fan of coaches just kind of being on the side, especially. Most of my stuff is game space. So I would, the onus is on the players for me, is when you feel when there's a drop ball or when it's a stoppage in game, I might blow a whistle, but if the game is going, I'll let it go. But a lot of the time it'll be, okay, jump into your teams and talk about what just happened in the last 5 phases and go from there. And I might just hover around. But often I'll play a game. It might be 4 phases that I'll tell them, but if they looks like they're doing well and they're enjoying it, yeah, I agree. Why stop it? It depends on the level of contact as well. If I'm controlling that, I'll probably be a bit more. I kind of use a red light, yellow light, green light system, whereas yellow light's shoulder in, green light's full on go. So if it's a green light situation, I'll probably be more keen to blow the whistle and stop it just to manage that kind of contact load. But yeah, I'm all ears. What's your answer to your own question?
Well, it's a little bit like what you're doing, and I think I've changed again in the last couple of years. Been empowered by watching John Fletcher and Rusty at work, and taking that sort of way of not breaking the game at all, breaking up the game, letting the coaches be players, which I think is very important, letting them run the game. And also being in the middle of the action. I think I used to do it accidentally. I used to not like stand on the sidelines. And then, again, you get these ideas confirmed by other coaches and you think, right, I can do this better. And then just being able to have a quiet word as it's going.
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to say. I like occasionally just like pull one kid out and say, what just happened there? Can you remember? Okay, now go back in and go and do it again and try and, if you had your time again, what would you do better? Okay, go back in and try and show me that.
And I think one of the things in feedback and effective feedback is if it's in the moment, it's far more powerful than when the moment's gone.
Yeah.
If you've got the chance to have video review, then you can probably pull them up on screen and say, look, this is about. But I also like being in the middle of it because you get an idea of the engagement of the players. If you're on the sidelines or behind the play, you can't see the faces, you can't see the eyes, you can't sense the heavy breathing. You can, when a player is disappointed, it can be in a flash. It can be a flash when their eyes and facial features give away something that if you can see it, you can immediately work out what's going on. And if you can catch their eye at that moment, where you've got to be quite close to them, they're not looking around for you. They're in the game. However, if you're in a referee's position or in the middle of the pitch, you can just say, just nod, wink, shake your head a little bit, move your hands around, or just step in and say, okay, Rich, I know you're disappointed with that. Try it again, or what are you going to do differently, or just ask someone else. Or if someone's done a good play, get them to support somebody else, get them to talk to each other. And that is going around your idea of the players being coaches. So I suppose it's taken me a long time to realize that's good. And the other thing is that I remember watching a coach saying to me, Dan, you don't say anything at the side of the pitch when you're watching the games. And I mean, sometimes I've done it, but most of the time I'm relatively quiet. And this is accidental that I've been doing this for a very long time. I try and say as little as possible, maybe shout on, or I used to shout on, let's do this move, or let's do that, or referee, what the. Yet I now know or understand that really the players don't hear it. Only maybe the winger gets the message. And being a winger from the old days, wingers never pass in the message because they don't understand the game anyway. They just want there to score the tries.
They're pretty low on the totem pole of leadership as well, so the message probably doesn't get received positively.
No, I had a really interesting interview with Ian Foster when he was at the Chiefs. Now he's with the All Blacks, and he said, well, what we're doing now is that all the plays are being called in by the wingers because they can see they're not right in the middle, and they have to call in. I said, so what happens when they get it wrong? They said, well, they get a right old telling off in New Zealand speak for it. I don't know if they've managed to take that through, but I sense that all the players need to take more charge of the game. One of the philosophies I've been trying to work to more recently is to move away from the idea that there is a me in team, which is a lovely expression. I just think it's too comfortable. I think there's a big I in the middle of win. And a lot of players will say I'm part of the team, yet the responsibility for mistakes or errors can be then spread amongst the team. And I don't think that's the way that players should think. I think they should think, I'm the most important person on the pitch. I've got to be motivated in the right way to do my best for myself. And if the best for myself is good enough, actually, that'll be good enough for the team.
Mm.
Now, that's not saying that you take all the kicks, run all the tries in, that sort of thing. You set, via the coach, the right sort of targets which motivate you to have a great game. And then, if you are having a great game, you are making every effort to have a good game. Everybody else will be benefiting from that, because you will know in order for you to have a great game, you need others around you to have a great game. So you will be agitating the people next to you to be stronger in defence, to communicate the passes, to make sure all the moves are being passed along the line, to work hard to get back when the ball's kicked over, to work hard in the last 5 minutes, to be calm in situations because it matters to you. Rather than relying on the team, rather than relying on the 2 or 3 key players to do everything and thinking, great, we've won that. And that's why I've never been a fan of man of the match.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me because it's not celebrating the right things.
Yeah.
Every player should feel that they've come off the pitch contributing. And if it happens to be you've dropped the goal to win the World Cup, there's been 15 players plus maybe 4 or 5 subs who've actually put the ball in that position for you to do that. And Johnny Wilkinson would probably be the first to admit that that was the case, or Joel Stransky previously, that they didn't win their World Cups. They did it because of the people around them.
Yeah. Well, I actually think that's the most important part of being a coach, is creating that psychosocial environment where everyone on that team feels valued. And I think one of my favourite interviews on this podcast so far is the one with Ray McLean, who's he runs a company called Leading Teams, and he wrote a book called Any Given Team, which I read about 12 years ago, and it totally changed my coaching. And I think you have to plant those seeds at the beginning. You have to have the players have to have a set of agreements on what it looks like for them on the field, or whether they're practicing or playing. What are their standards? And then the coach is there to really uphold them to those standards in a fair and open fashion. And I also, for me, that's heavily based on athlete peer review as well. So any athlete in the team can go to another athlete and say, here's the 3 things you did really well, but here's 3 things you need to work on to be better for our team. So, yeah, I think a technical understanding of the game is obviously really important. A tactical understanding is really important. But for me, the stuff that gets me out of bed in the morning is that, like, building that team and forming that team and watching it kind of get a bit disrupted. But then that moment when you see everyone kind of paddling in the right direction, that's where I get the most reward as a coach.
And sometimes I found that's happened by accident more than design on my part. And I've looked back at sometimes some of the best teams I've been part of. The mix of the players has worked so well that we've enjoyed each other's company, and they've done well and enjoyed themselves, and they haven't necessarily been well beaters, but they've achieved far more than they expected, and that's great. I was going to add in that some of these things I spread my ideas wide, and then I narrow them down as I find more information and I understand more. Just going back to sort of light bulb moments, Lynn Kidman's book.
Oh, it's unreal, eh?
Which was, I remember getting it, and I've never been. Sorry, what's it called again?
Coaching Decision Makers.
Yeah, and it was one of the. Sadly, one of the books I did enjoy reading cover to cover was the Harry Potter books. I do read other books.
Yeah.
But this book I was so excited by, and I lapped it up, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I had a great chance to listen to her at a coaching conference back in, I can't remember, maybe it was 2005 or 2007. She was absolutely superb. and really energized the audience. And also at that conference was two French coaches, Intimil Entamac, if I pronounce that, and Didier Retier.
Okay.
And they were superb. They were very much of that ilk of player-centered. Let's make this into a game. Entamac talked about the jeu.
Yeah.
And I, for a while, having no French at all, probably in Canada, you probably speak, you're multilingual and speak a lot of French.
I should be.
Yeah.
Not many bilingual Australians floating around, so I'm one of them. But I'm trying.
Oh, right. All right. Okay. So you're getting into the Canadian way. Yeah. So he talked about the jewel. So I thought that was like a jewel, like Jewel in the Crown or Jewel in the Ring. Duel, which is the 1 versus 1.
Yeah.
And he said this is every player with the ball needs to try and beat the person in front of them. And then they make the decisions. And Retier was saying, right, we're going to run the lineouts, but it's all going to be a competition. So we're not going to go through lineout drills. You're just going to throw the ball and see who's going to win in the air. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. I've never thought this was possible. Yet I should have known it was the way to go because it is the most exciting. It's energizing. This is what players want. Well, I say that. I think quite a few players want it. Other players do like being drilled. They like the safety of doing the reps in the gym. Yeah, they'll push themselves. They will go through the pain barriers to make themselves stronger, faster, fitter, nutritionally fantastic. These are all measurables. I don't say they're easy to do. They don't challenge you in the same way that when you're being made uncomfortable in decision-making situations. So some players will prefer to go through a drilled, structured session. They won't like to be put through those decision-making uncomfortables because environmentally that's the way they are, and also that's just the way they want to act. So Lynn Kidman, those two French coaches, and then very lately been listening to a very inspirational guy called Mark Bennett of PD.
On the show. Yeah.
Ah, right. Well, in which case you will know that he has got some great ways for approaches to getting the best out of athletes. And one of the things I really liked was his idea of the rule of 3 and UAE. So the rule of 3 is that if something goes wrong, the idea is you coach yourself out of it. Then you ask a fellow player. Of course, it sounds like I'm an English public school boy. You ask a fellow, you ask a fellow player, and then if all that fails, then you go to the coach. That's the rule of 3. And the other one is the UAE, which is you decide with the players. And this is what you said just a bit earlier on. You decide with the players what's unacceptable, what's acceptable, what's exceptional, and that then helps frame the environment. And I thought that was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. So is that what there's that sort of things that he was?
Yes, definitely. Those two things were they're the backbone of what Mark talks about is unacceptable, acceptable, exceptional, and then the rule of 3. And I definitely, like any good coach, have stolen both of those and used those in my daily practice. Definitely the rule of 3, the acceptable, unacceptable. I find it doesn't really fit with like the other stuff that I'm doing based off Ray McLean. So I don't want to overload the guys with too much. But the rule of 3 I find really helpful because I think as coaches we want to help and we want to tell and because we love the game and we want to talk about it. This is why I did the podcast. I want to talk about rugby, and my wife will only listen so much, even though she played for 15 years. There's a limit to her bandwidth. The coaches want to talk about that, and I think that's the hard part. It took me a while to minimize that talking, and actually it should be the athletes who should be talking about it, and that's where that rule of 3 comes in. Is if I kind of step in and have to correct you for like not focusing or not putting in enough the amount of effort you said you were going to, we've failed there. So the rule of 3, I kind of use it as more as an accountability for the players on work rate. that and focus, that they have to self-organise that. It can't be me, because if it's me, it's not going to work on the field because I'm not on the field. So yeah. And just on Lynn Kidman's book, it's athlete-centered coaching, developing decision makers.
Yeah, great, and it's a must-have on your shelf.
Absolutely.
Well, sorry, not must-have on your shelf. There's lots of people who buy the books and say I've got the book but not read it. This is a must-read.
Yeah.
Absolutely, one of the best books I've read.
Yeah, it's got some good stuff on team culture in there as well. That goes right up like Ray McLean's kind of alley. Yeah. Great.
So just going back to a couple of things that then you said, one on the Mark Bennett is something which I was, one of the reasons why I got heavily into understanding learning was about 4 or 5 years ago with Rugby Coach Weekly. We put together something called a curriculum called Easy Coach Curriculum. And it was an interesting challenge to work my way through each age group and work out what they needed to have in skills terms. And it really took me away from rugby and into learning culture and understanding how we learn and some of the myths of learning. And I was able to kick learning styles into touch. And there's others which I think will be kicked into touch, which are controversial if I said them, so I won't. But one of the things I was interested in was mastery, because I could not understand how anyone could master a skill and then say they could move on. I was certain that Johnny Wilkinson would say, I've never mastered goal kicking.
Yeah, I'm going to stop practicing it.
Yeah, and so eventually I've come around to the understanding, and I'm not quite sure whether it's Mark Bennett who led me along this or someone like Stuart Armstrong led me to this, but I now understand that mastery is not getting it right every single time. It's if you get it wrong, you understand why you've got it wrong, and you understand most of the ways to correct it next time. So if you when you pass the ball and it doesn't reach the target in the intended way, you will know next time, yes, I didn't actually follow through with my top hand, or I didn't turn my hips out. Now that's mastery, because few players under enormous pressure can really, really perform. And then just going back and back and back, when I was at Bath, season at Bath, and it was absolutely fantastic, all these fantastic players, Brian Ashton would come down and he would throw out all these ideas. And what I got to understand was that the team was actually run by the players to a great extent. And the coaches would throw in all these things. And then the likes of Andy Roberts and Stuart Barnes would say, right, I like that, we'll keep that. I don't like that, we'll get rid of that. Yet he would provide them with that enough rope for them to create. And then they would add their own parts to it. And that was a fantastic, powerful piece of coaching, which, Brian Ashton is still out there saying these things, and probably was not vilified, because he probably did it in the right way, but he struggled to convince many people in 2007 when he was England coach that was the way to do it, and which is a great pity. Though of course England then did actually get to the World Cup final in that year. So anyway, so it's just you reflect back on those things and think, if only I'd understood that.
Yeah, and I think that probably leads me to my next question about coach development. What's if you could have a major influence on coach development, what do you think of some of the things that are missing in rugby, in coach development, especially with rugby? Because I've definitely got my own opinions, but I'd love to hear yours in terms of as you go in. Like, I find it interesting that if you've played a certain level, it's competency based, and you can skip level 1 and go to level 2. That's intriguing.
That's the old days. That's the old days. Luckily, that's the old days.
So what do you where do you see there's room for improvement? Where is it strong? Those kind of things.
I think that the national governing bodies have a tough task ahead of them in order to roll out what they really want. The guys that are at the top, I know the guys at the top of the England and the Wales games in particular and in the Irish. And their problem is time and resources. And I think they've got all the right directions. I changed little bits here and there, but nothing fundamental. It's how you deliver to busy people. Coaches in grassroots are often the dads and the mums increasingly who are busy. And if they're busy, then they don't have much time for coach development, though they'd love to have it. So how do you upskill these coaches? And I like the idea of if you can mentor them, and if the system could mentor them, that would be, I think, the most effective way. And the little bits of mentoring I've done with junior coaches, the coaches I know have really benefited from it because they can ask the sorts of questions on a weekly or monthly basis, which is what's happening in front of them. If you go on a 2-day course, there's so much has to be packed in. And anyone who's been in a learning environment knows that you can only learn a few things over a day. You can't go away with 120 things. You can only learn a couple of things. And so, in a sense, they make a mockery of their own aims, because they'll say, well, in a session, you're only really supposed to cover a couple of things. But in this whole course, we've got to cover all these things. So they know that. So is there a system of ongoing mentoring that just helps each one of these through? That would be good. And I think that can be maybe put in place in some way as technology improves. I mean, the fact is, I don't know what time it is in Canada at the moment, but here we are having this chat, which we would have never been able to have maybe 6-7 years ago.
I already got 3 things off you out of our conversation. So,
right, okay.
That's going to hopefully make me a better coach.
Well, and actually,
2, and then I remembered about some conversations that I had with other guests. So yeah.
Well, and that's
you're right.
And just talking about it often is the best way. So when I interview coaches, and I get that, just like you, I get that opportunity to do it all the time. It is absolutely brilliant because they are often very open and they just say things in a different way. And sometimes they suddenly give you an idea which you say, I think I might have been doing that, but I'm not sure. So let me try that out. And they give you confidence. And I think if I was to then add on to the coach development, it's the confidence to actually go out in front of players and coach. Because really, if you're on a coaching course, you end up coaching well-meaning, helpful people who want to do the exercise in front of you, which is difficult. And I know that WRU, Jerry Roberts of WRU is doing a brilliant job reformatting, and Mike Morgan as well at WRU. They're reformatting the whole way that's put together. And I think that's really exciting. And I know that Colin Moran at the IRFU is also trying to think, right, how can we give these coaches a much better experience, inspire them, get them to go away and not just be brilliant in week 1 when they are full of vim, vigor and energy, but in week 28 when 9 boys turn up out of your 15 and 3 of them are completely silly from the start. Just how do you deal with that? Let alone we can't catch and pass.
No, that would be I probably thought you were going to go down that way too, but that would be my feeling as well. Like I come from a phys ed background, so being in front of a group and teaching that's not an issue for me. But knowing full well, not everyone comes from a teaching background, so they're getting used to being in front of a group of sometimes unwilling participants who are there for whatever reasons. And 2, just knowing what does good coaching look like? Because I found my experience was we did a lot on, say, functional role analysis so that you can select the right players for your team. So what is the functional role analysis of an open side flanker, and what's your playing group look like? And that's all great. That's all important. But if I can't coach, if I can't plan a session, deliver a session, reflect on it, work individually with those players, to make them better, because I think that's a big part of the job of the coach as well. Is I want you to be the starting open side flanker. So here's what I would like to see, and what do you think you should be doing better? If you're not aware of that, or aren't skilled in that, or haven't had a chance to play with that, it's a long, hard road, and I think we probably get quite a bit of attrition as a result of that.
I really like that idea. What's good coaching look like? Because it needs to be not just the presenter in front of you. It needs to be all the different types of coaches that you come across, and some are loud, some are quiet. There's a great clip out there at the moment showing Paul Gustard, just his starting off at Harlequins, and it is him mic'd up, so he's doing a lot of talking, and that would be very good for coaches to look at and see his style. Yet, as you said yourself, if you've been in coaching for a long time, you have got that confidence to have that patter and banter. If you're used to dealing with 2 or 3 people in an office on a day-to-day basis and haven't been in the changing room environment that no doubt both of us have been in, you don't know when that banter can just be enough to energize, or actually it's causing a problem, and that confidence. So I like that idea of what does good coaching look like for you? There are some coaches who will stand up and you will think, if only I could coach like that. Wouldn't it be brilliant to have that delivery, that confidence, that turn of phrase? There's some coaches who are absolutely hilarious, and I think, well, they haven't said anything, yet they've said it in a way that, oh God, I wish I said. The other thing I think, just building on what you said, is that often coaches don't know what the game should look like for their players. So one of the things I find when I go on coaching the coaches courses is that I ask the coaches how much rugby do the players watch, and they will say maybe half of the players may watch the rugby, but most of them end up saying not many at all. And I think that's a really good thing, because the players, if they watched first class rugby or Premiership rugby in, say, the UK, or Super Rugby or internationals, that wouldn't be the game that a 12-year-old or 13-year-old would be playing. It looks completely different. And the problem is that their coaches think that the game should look like that. And I think it's much better, and coach development, if they can see clips of what a half decent side, under 12s, under 13s plays, so they know what to expect. So they know that they don't have to go through phase play or organised defence or do backs moves, that they just need to play rugby and do a completely different set of skills. So if I was to say, the one thing I would add in is if you could get lots of clips of average teams of every age group playing, to get an idea of what the game looks like, to build on what you've just said is what a good coaching looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, changing tact a little bit, you mentioned when we were setting up this interview that you wanted to discuss, that sometimes pro rugby seems a little bit joyless, and another area that you wanted to talk about was focusing on the right way to win. They seem pretty closely linked. What do you mean by those two points? And did you want to chat about those further?
Yeah, joyless is that sometimes I watch clips of coaches and they look like they're having the worst time. And you sort of see it with maybe kids coaches, and there are ways around that, and you can make it joyful for them. I just think that in pro rugby, having been old enough to play an amateur rugby and then move into semi-pro rugby, I've seen how it's changed for the coaches at the top level. And it's just not a great place to be. And I feel really sorry for these coaches, really. And I'm not saying that we should mollycoddle them and cuddle them and that sort of thing, because, yeah, they've made some decisions to be there. It just seems that they are living from week to week based on 15 players crossing a whitewash and doing a job for them. And it just so much depends on the balance of the ball, a refereeing decision here and there. And though I think you put highly trained young men and young women together, and yes, they will create an atmosphere around the team. Yet, if you are bouncing around at the bottom of the league table and jobs are on the line for next year, then what sort of sporting experience is that? And I read a brilliant book recently by a guy I know a little bit of, and I've met him a number of times, a chap called Ben Ryan, 7's Heaven, when he coached the Fiji team. Brilliant book, very well recommended. Yet there was a certain amount of joy, but there was so much pain in there. And this is not the pain of Fiji as a nation and some of the problems which go around that. It was the pain of the marginal player. The player who is the 13th, 14th, 15th player who was not going to the Olympics. And I just thought, is it worth it? Is it worth it that person's got to go through that for their sport? Because I don't know how much of the Football World Cup you watched.
Not a lot.
Well, this is fine. There was some moments there from the England football team which made it worthwhile that they didn't actually win the World Cup, but they looked like they were enjoying doing what they were doing, getting there. And when they came home, they hadn't won. In fact, they'd almost lost as many games as they won. Yet they'd enjoyed being part of a team who enjoyed each other's company, and that's made it worthwhile. Now, the World Cup isn't your job. Your job is playing league football. So the World Cup is a bonus to them. And a lot of them, well, the England team certainly don't get paid for it. They give their money away to charity. So that makes it a little bit easier. Yeah, and that is great. And that's exactly how it should be. So I just think there's a great pity that great sports like rugby, but like many sports, become such a business, such a livelihood, that you become sick of it. And there's a lot of talk now about how you develop players. And there's lots of great examples of players who were good at many sports before they specialised, and they specialised very late on in life. And isn't it a pity that you become a full-time professional and you probably play a bit of golf, but you don't actually go off and play a summer sport? Like in the old, I don't know, you probably were multi-sport, just like I was. But in the olden days, people like Ian Botham, for instance, he played cricket for England and then played Somerset and then played football for Scunthorpe United or someone like that. And you know, is that not a better way for these young men and young women now more so to enjoy it? And I'm not sure there's a discussion to be had. I just think it's a disappointing situation in the world that actually you're under that sort of pressure. I don't know how you feel about that, or maybe I'm being too soft on these people, and they are earning lots of money.
No, well, for me, there's a couple of things I deliberately don't do on this podcast. Is I don't talk in a bad way about any players or any coaches, because I think they can get that just by opening up their computer. And I just think I think of it like, you know, I don't want to be responsible for any more than they already receive, and I think that it's too much. It's too much. And the other thing I was thinking of when you were talking about that is like, I think there's a way. Some nations are showing the way to do it well. I feel like Ireland and New Zealand, like the way they manage their players and the amount of time they don't have them in rugby compared to other nations is really impressive. I think, and you know, you look at Ireland in the Six Nations, and there was that bar chart going around on player management and how much time they didn't play and compared to everyone else. And I think that can't be missed either. Is that you know, a coach might need a week off, or you know, a player might need to sit this one based on the data that you've been collecting. And I think just looking after both players and coaches, because they're what brings in the fans and brings in the viewership and things like that. So that would be an area I'd like to see a big focus.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm just thinking also, I've been watching the Amazon Prime series about the All Blacks, and the name of it escapes me. And I've watched only 2 or 3, so this is just a short impression of it. A lot of the players talk about how they've created a much better life for themselves and their families and the surrounding families by being able to play at the top level. So actually, not dissimilar to a number of the Fijian players, they were their meal ticket. And in Fijian's case, quite literally the meal ticket for some of them, because they were able to earn a wage which allowed them to have some time, and often that time means that they can family members can be educated, and that's a great thing. I'm not saying that happens in New Zealand, but that pressure on that player to continue to play, and when they get injured, there's a clip of Ryan Crotty saying losing's bad enough, getting injured's the worst. And I'm sure you were like me. I suffered a number of injuries. I was very lucky I was able to play as much and as long as I could. But every time you were injured, it was a very low moment. And if that's your job as well, that's tough. And I feel sorry for the players in those cases. And I also agree totally that it's very easy to be critical of coaches. And I'm very careful myself not to say that. Certainly not openly, even if I think it. And I might disagree with a selection, and I certainly might disagree with a tactic. But I know that at the top level, all those coaches are working every minute of every day to find a way to win those games. So if someone, I live in Wales. I'm English and I live in Wales, and I see the Welsh press absolutely at the throats of the top coaches all the time. And I think it's tough. I think it's tough. I think New Zealand's worst. Michael Checker is always good value to watch in the box. He lives every moment of the game.
He sure does. Yeah. Had him on the show. I love chatting with him.
All right. Well, that's definitely. There's a whole list of people I'm desperate. Well, not desperate, but I am really looking forward to listening to. So
that one I had to take a few deep breaths before the kickoff of that interview, because it was a big one for me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I'm looking forward to that one. So, what did you learn from Michael Checker then?
What I got from him was that he's a real players coach. He really cares about his players, and he just goes to bat for them. And I don't actually think, maybe in private it's different, but I don't actually think he cares about a lot of the stuff that he gets directed at him. I kind of think he's similar to Eddie. He'll take it from the press, so the players don't have to take it. And I find that really admirable. And that's why I really like him. I know he's got this persona and but I actually don't think he cares. I think he cares about his players. I find that I really respect that.
Yeah, well, luckily we don't have to go in front of the press and answer those questions, or sit in front of the board probably and take all the flack. So that's the way. I think you've got to go out to bat for your players first and foremost.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, you're the editor of Rugby Coach Weekly. It's been around for quite some time now. Do you want to just to wrap up the interview, discuss the role that you have there? What's your kind of day-to-day look like? And you also mentioned that you're developing the Rugby Coach Weekly website further to try and provide assistance to coaches. And just want to chat a bit about that.
Yeah, so Rugby Coach Weekly has been going in its original format. We started it in about 2007, 2008. We had initially it was something called Rugby Coach. Then we had things called Smart Sessions, and then we thought, right, let's have a weekly aimed at grassroots coaches. And that's the website itself. We've moved pretty much to the website only. We do sell books and DVDs, but we find that most coaches now, when they want information, they go on the web. We want to be one of those go-to places just to provide a mass of different ideas. The difficulty is that I've got my way and the way that I think is best. So I have to sometimes not bite my lip because we make sure everything is safe and appropriate. I don't necessarily use everything which is on there because I'm not that necessarily that sort of coach, but there are other coaches that will do it like that, and that's important. It's not one way to skin this cat. It's there is lots of different ways, and it does depend on the coach. And constantly we are looking for new ways to do old things and old ways to do new things, perhaps, and little changes. And there's always something we can learn and reflect on and change. And so this is the great challenge at the moment, and it's a different marketplace to the one that we were in 2003, when email just started and Google had just started, and there's a lot more video out there, and there is Facebook, there's Twitter, and there's a much greater debate going on around rugby, which is fantastic. And so it's an exciting place to be and to be part of. And so what does my day look like? I'll get up, make my wife her breakfast. Then the difficulty is you could easily spend the next 3 hours working your way through Twitter and arguing with everybody on Twitter. But generally, it's a case of putting together tightly written, that's the aim, tightly written, well illustrated articles, activities, exercises, drawing on as many different coaches' ideas. Some of them are my ideas. I mean, most of it looks like it's written by me, but it's really me listening as much as I can to different coaches, and then standing on the shoulders of giants, because you spend a bit of time with people I've mentioned before, like John Fletcher and Russell Earnshaw, Peter Walton, the like, and you come away with a part of ideas, which you then you can say, right, how do I translate that into things that I do? Does that confirm? Does that disagree? And then going out into the coaching, athletic coaching and education coaching area, and finding out that there's a great debate going across all the time about how we learn and how we develop. And people always want to try and put labels on everything, try and say this is this theory. And I just don't think it's that. I think it's organic. I think that, for instance, Mark Bennett hasn't put theories on things. He's just said, here is a methodology to help you think about something which is, it's not necessarily obvious, but it is a good way of approaching it. So I'm not a great fan of people talking about a theory as opposed to saying practically this is what it looks like. And so I try to bust a few myths as I go along, and that can be quite fun, and sometimes leads you into places which may be a little bit uncomfortable, which is exactly where you want to be, because if we're not agitated and comfortable, then I probably think we're not learning.
Yeah, that's great. And if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to reach out via email or Twitter? I've got my Twitter handle, which I can't actually remember. It's at Dan Cottrell. Was it at Dan_Cottrell? I don't think I know. But I'll look it up right now.
Yeah, thank you. Otherwise, email me, and I'm always delighted to get emails. Dan.Cottrell@rugby-coach.com. No one can spell my name, so it's COTTRELL.
And you do have an underscore in your Twitter handle.
Oh, do I? Right. So it's at Dan_Cottrell.
That's right.
But normally, I think the idea is I'm in the sort of top 10 or top 20 Dan Cottrells out there, certainly when it comes to rugby coaching, just because, not because of me, because the business has worked really hard to say, look, we want to be one of the places that people go to for rugby coaching ideas. And we're not the only place, and there are some great other sites out there who do things which are different to us, and that's good. It's good to have that out there, because it keeps everyone thinking, keeps everyone busy, and it supports the game.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. All right, well, we always end the podcast with the same final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up and just getting into the game, who was one of the players that really stood out to you and that you liked what they did on the field?
It would be David Duckham. So for those who don't know who he is, If you've seen the 1973 Barbarians game, he was I think he was only one of the 2 or 3 Englishmen who actually looked like they could play for Wales at the time. And he was fantastic, his sidestepping and everything. So he was the inspiration then.
Okay, so he played for England?
He played for England, and he played for Coventry, and he played for the Barbarians, and he played, well, I'm pretty sure he must have played for the Lions as well. But he was part of that famous 73 Barbarians side, which beat the All Blacks. And since that's pretty much the only bit of rugby television that we watched for a long time, that was the guy who I thought looked amazing. And not that I ever aspired at the time to be like him. I wanted to be more like Ian Botham in those days.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Botham. He was great. Great battles with the Aussies, and played a bit over here too in Australia. Played some Shield cricket, I think.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, and what about now? Who are some of your favourite players going around that you really enjoy watching?
There are lots of players in the UK I'm excited to watch, but the player who really excites me is Curtly Beale.
Yeah.
Just because he does, and the team he plays in, and the players around. I just love watching that team. That's the Waratahs, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the Waratahs. I just love watching them play. I love the way that they want to play, and there are lots of great teams who play some lovely rugby. But that's the player I think. Just got something. You'll try something a little extra, and sometimes it'll work. I think he's probably very frustrating to have in your team sometimes.
Well, I think I don't know, and I think that again going back to Checker, I think Michael Checker has gotten Curtly Beale to another level. Like I also think him going. He went to Wasps, right?
Yeah.
I think that was huge for him as well. That he got out of the bubble and he was playing some exceptional rugby in Wasps, and then brought it back. And in the World Cup, he was outstanding. And the quarterfinal, semi-final of Super Rugby just gone, also outstanding. So I think, I'm a fan too, and you just need maybe some straight runners, some ball runners on the outside of him. But I love that he's the kind of player that you can't tighten the screws on too much, because you'll limit their creativity or their ability to go. You just got to let them go and give them solutions rather than say, don't do that, don't do this.
So it'll be interesting to how you would coach him. And when I say coach him, I don't think you'd be telling him much. I think you'd just be giving him environments and saying, right, so what would you do, and how would you do this, and how can you bring other players in around you, and then off he goes.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I think we've seen some players not be coached in that way and be hindered. Cool. And what about coaches? You've mentioned a few. Who are some of your favourite high profile coaches going around?
Well, I think that the guys at the top have a very tough job. So hats off to all of those. But the coach really that I'll always look back on and say, right, he's the one who's influenced me the most, and I can say that he helped change the way I thought about rugby, is a guy called Kevin Bowring.
Okay.
Who, again, maybe not on the radar of some coaches, but many coaches in the UK will maybe remember. He was the coach for Wales for a short period of time, and then in the way that Wales do, they moved on to another coach quite quickly, and then he went and worked for the RFU and ended up as the running the elite coaching development part. And many coaches have been very lucky to pass under him, but I knew him because he taught at my old school, and he sat me down on a bench after I just come back to the school and just run around doing some very poor coaching by playing myself. And he said, Dan, have you ever thought about going into teaching? And that was a light bulb moment for me, because that's when I actually stopped being not that moment, but within 4 or 5 months, I stopped being an accountant and went off and became a teacher. I went to teaching college. And I remember the interview I had. I was still working as an accountant. I was going to make the big leap into teaching. And I went for the interview to get the place. And I went in, and the guy was a big rugby fan. So we talked about Gloucestershire rugby because he knew quite a lot about that. And I said after about 15 minutes, I said, "Are you going to ask me any questions about?" "Oh no, you're in, you're fine." And you know how you go to interviews and you're worried that you're not going to. And I thought, funny, that's how life works sometimes. That rugby opens doors.
Yeah,
And I don't think rugby opened the door, but it was a moment where rugby breaks down a few barriers. So yeah, Kevin Bowring, and I'm sure that a number of people who are listening in will know who I mean. And a lovely guy, very, very quietly spoken. He's played a long time before me, but I know he was a pretty tough cookie on the pitch. Aren't all the quiet coaches like that?
Yeah. All right, cool. And then last question: who's someone in your coaching community that you feel is doing great work and deserves some public recognition?
There's three guys, and I'm delighted you asked me this question. And I'm going to have to pass this out to some of the people around where I live. But there's a guy who taught my son at the local school, a chap called Liam Evans, and he has been absolutely brilliant in bringing on my son into coaching and all the boys around them, and more as a facilitator, getting them to go out and coach and be involved in the community of coaching. So those two, and then the two guys who are now looking after Swansea schoolboys, as I've had to step away, and they're doing a great job. Young coaches, a chap called Liam Brooks and Gareth Davis, they're learning all the time. Their hearts are absolutely in the right place. They're full of energy, always looking to improve. But as you've said earlier on, they love the process, and more they want the best for the players, not the best for themselves. Yeah, there's reflected glory about winning, but they want the best for the players. And I saw that last year with what they did with the team, and the players really came together because they actually probably realized that the coaches were for them on every single level. And if there's one thing that you can do, if you can't coach them to catch and pass and tackle and ruck, is actually to care about them, well, that's what it's all about.
I think so. I think it's so important, and that's a great way to finish. All right, Dan. Well, it's been great having you on the show. I really, really enjoyed our chat, and we went down a few little rabbit holes there that were quite interesting, and I got a lot out of it, like I said earlier, and just want to thank you massively for giving up your time, and really appreciate you coming on for a chat.
No, I've really enjoyed it, and I probably had a chance to ask a fewer questions than I normally do. And so it's been a bit unusual being on the other side and then rattling on myself. So I try when I coach not to rattle on so much, but I'm now nervous that I do rattle on too much. So I'm going to have to put a microphone on myself and just check that I don't.
All right, beauty. All right, well, great to chat. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at Rugby Coaches CNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.